The batshit crazy prediction I have is that the Knicks wind up dealing Mitchell Robinson.
Wow.
And again, listen, I don't want it. I ultimately don't think it could happen, but let me at least explain some idea as to why. All right.
Didn't expect it. Okay, keep going.
So, and Nerlens Noel is filled in admirably, but that is not a reason why in a 10-game sample size, you then cut the cord on Mitch, right? It's just not. Mitch is a far superior player than Nerlens Noel.
Nice analogy, by the way.
Thank you. We have heard a lot about Andre Drummond from Mark Berman of the Post. Look, I'm not saying that Berman is right. I'm not saying Berman is wrong. All I want to point out is that a lot of times we can kind of ignore smoke and we can just say there's no fire going on. And I don't want Andre Drummond. I've made that very clear. I think that trading for him would be a disaster in a lot of ways. He's just an inefficient guy who only shoots at the rim. So that should tell you quite a bit. But this idea of having Andre Drummond.
Well, he's inefficient because he takes shots other than at the rim. When he shoots at the rim, he's pretty damn efficient.
Yes, but he also doesn't take that many shots away from the rim.
He does enough silly shit away from the rim to make him inefficient. Okay, keep going.
Yes. Anyways, he's a guy who's just very much empty calories. He'll gobble up a ton of rebounds. But I think the point here with Drummond, which kind of concerns me, is that the dude has started every single game in his NBA career except for one since the start of his second year. So this is a guy who you bring in as a starter. I would like, if he had to be here, you would hope that he would be coming off the bench, right? But then there's this idea of, okay, well, if we've still got Drummond going on, then you're not going to bump Noel to a third option. You're not going to bump Mitch to a second option. You're not probably going to have Drummond come in with Mitch, because if Drummond is getting 28 minutes a game, I mean, you're not going to be able to split accordingly with Mitch and Noel. And I'm also not saying that Taj Gibson deserves to have clout over any of the other players. It's not like, well, I take Taj over them. It's the idea though of, well, Taj is a third string backup. So he's not going to be in the conversation anyway. The only reason he's playing is because Mitch went down in the first place. So if these Drummond rumors are in fact true, it just makes you think of, okay, well, why are they true? What is the purpose of bringing him into the conversation? And I don't really know. Because again, it's like it all comes down to opportunity cost. If you're not paying Mitch, it's not because of the fact that you have no interest in doing anything but getting a star. Because again, the Knicks know what the star market looks like. They know that unless there's some cockamamie, like, oh, we'll magically lure Kawhi Leonard and trade everything for Bradley Beal, and now we've got some pot, stewing, then we're great. That's not going to happen. So why do you do it? Why do you trade Mitchell Robinson? It might just be because of the fact that he's not the player you want to build with long term. And if that's the case, then I get it. I would like to see him here long term, but I would understand not doing it. So, and then we talk about Kyle O'Quinn, who, I mean, he's in the rumors, but Kyle O'Quinn.
We haven't talked about him yet, but
we haven't. But
let's talk about Kyle
everyone's
O'Quinn.
favorite Bar Mitzvah cast. He's great. But, Kyle O'Quinn isn't going to be the type of guy who's stealing minutes from Mitchell Robinson necessarily. He could be stealing them from Nerlens Noel, unless you also figure out a way to bump up Nerlens Noel to the starting spot permanently or indefinitely at least. And if you're doing that with a healthy Mitch, then Mitch is not on the team anymore because you're not bringing Mitch off the bench. So
can I ask you something?
Yes, please.
Because Drummond makes it's 28, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would need to be if it was a trade, it would need to be at least a 3-for-1 trade. And even then the money would get dicey because the Knicks only have $15 million in space. Do you think this would be a buyout sign situation, or do you think this would be a trade?
It sounds like it's from a trade perspective. What I've read is that the Cavs don't seem to have interest in buying out Drummond because Drummond could just go anywhere, and that would be a bad look for the Cavs. They want something out of this. Even a second round pick would mean like, hey, we basically traded for Drummond and away for Drummond for nothing. We're at a complete neutral point. If they want to buy him out, again, I don't necessarily want it, but then if you're Drummond, why do you sign with the Knicks? Because other teams, like we know about the Nets, right? How they're going to sign Blake Griffin. Well, what about the other opportunity where they could also sign Drummond they've got the tax mid-level exception. So if they figured out a way to split that up, or if they have some money at their reserve, they've also got with Dinwiddie. If they don't trade Dinwiddie, they have a disabled player exception worth about the same as the tax mid-level exception. So if you're Brooklyn, do you do that? Everything going on where if you're buying out Drummond, he's not coming here, period. And nor should he. But it's just, it has permeated my brain for why all of these rumors about big men are coming up. Because
I hear you.
If that's the case and the Knicks are genuinely interested, what does that mean for the tandem of Mitch and Noel? So I genuinely don't know.
Here's what I think. I think if there was a trade out there, okay, let me caveat this because I don't want to get not that I have time to go on Twitter anymore, but I don't want to get my mentions eviscerated like you're going to get.
Still don't want it. Again, I don't want it. I don't want to.
If there was a way for them to bring on Drummond with essentially by giving up like literally nothing that matters to them, but just by taking on his salary, and then they could use Mitch to get some, like, again, this doesn't make any sense because they just signed Steven Adams to an extension. But like, if there was a way to use Mitch to get Lonzo, right? Or again, that's not going to happen, but use Mitch to get something that you really need for your team. And your thinking was like, all right, we're going to bring in Drummond and potentially, pay him whatever he wants this summer. And he's going to be our starting center going forward. And we've used Mitch to upgrade us in another key area. Like I could see that making sense. I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Mitchell Robinson has that type of trade value around the league right now. I think the fact that like no one fucking wants Andre Drummond speaks to all you need to, and again, I think Mitchell Robinson is going to be the better player than Andre Drummond over the next several years, which is why this whole thing would be insane. Because Drummond's going to command at least $20 million a year, and I'm betting you could get Mitch at something, maybe not half that, but like 12.
Hold on, though. If Drummond's not of value, then what team is going to pay him $20 million?
I think some team would pay him.
I don't see a team out there. That's the thing. I really don't. I think that he is like maybe 10 or 12 million.
He's a name. And some
That's
GM it's all it takes is one. There's 30 and all it takes is one. And some GM out there will want the opportunity to be like, here, owner, we got you a two-time All-Star who's how old is Drummond? 27 years old?
28 maybe, something like
27.
That.
27. He's not that old. He was in the All-Star conversation this year. He's going to lead the league in rebounding. It's something that a GM could show to their owner and be like, and look, the idealized version of Andre Drummond is still good, although I want to apologize to you and all of our listeners, of course. I was wrong. Andre Drummond is shooting like dog shit at the rim this year. He's shooting 52%, which is in the second percentile around the rim. 6th percentile, but he's been bad for years.
Yeah.
The previous four, 62, 64, 62, 63, those are all below in the bottom third of the league for bigs. So he's just not good.
Right. And the other idea, of course, is like, if you really want Andre Drummond, if that's what tickles your fancy, New York, why do you have to trade for him? Why wouldn't you just sign him in the offseason if you really needed that guy? Because again, I can understand if you say like, we just don't see a future with Mitch and we want to trade him for some asset in the way that like Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince, I think, brought back a first round pick and a lesser second round pick.
Yeah.
So, are we saying that's Mitch's market? Are we saying that's his value? And at what point is that first round pick eclipsing the value of what Mitchell Robinson already is? And I would rather take Mitch than that first round pick. But if a team like the Wizards comes calling and says, well, shit, we don't have any money available for free agency. We want to build around Bradley Beal. We could very easily take on Mitchell Robinson and his very small contract and then pay him over. What's that?
They have Thomas Bryant, so they're not the best example.
But Thomas Bryant's torn ACL, I believe.
Yeah, I think he'll be back.
He's barely making money. And if you're having Thomas Bryant be your backup, then you're having one of the more higher caliber players as your backups, because that team is so broken defensively that having someone anchor it who's not Robin Lopez or I guess Wagner, it doesn't work for them long term. So if you can say like, hey, Brad, we're building good players around you we're trading picks for him. The idea of, what does that cost? I don't really know, but yeah. What does Scarlett think about it? What's Scarlet Ray think about Andre Drummond?
Scarlet Ray, do you think the Knicks should trade for Andre Drummond?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
But then what I didn't.
What? Don't ask me what you think. But no, it's a bad idea. Trust me.
This is what happens when your daughter only looks at the eye test, John.
Andre Drummond has not been good this year.
No.
On offense around the rim, he's a hellacious rebounder, which I think does have real value. And I think if you use him in the right role and he commits to being just a screen setting dive man, the guy still sets as good as screens as anybody in the league. He's still a presence on defense. He's a big body you could move around a little bit. I think we both hope that this is not going to happen, and let's move on.
But this was our batshit crazy one. So
this is a batshit crazy.
I had to throw it in.